How do you explain this situation? And I take a strict policy of kind of a don't ask, don't tell. If they don't ask, don't tell. You don't have to give too much information. I think that that's one of the things that messes us up a lot in general negotiations. As we're doing this business, whether you're talking to a seller, or a private lender, or a bank, or whatever, the times that you just decide that you're going to continue telling things and offering up extra information may raise more questions than were originally had, just because of things that you're saying. So what we need to understand is that when you're going into a conversation with these banks, you've got to understand that, hey, I have a very specific need here. Okay, so let's talk about insurance, right? When you sell or when you buy your house subject to, your seller no longer owns that property, right? The deed, the warranty deed, is being given to you and maybe possibly subsequently your end buyer with a wraparound transaction. But either way, the deed is transferring out of your seller's name. Now, I want to be very extremely clear here. That deed transfer triggers the due on sale clause. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. We are triggering the due on sale clause, and you need to be ultra clear with that with your seller. Okay, you'll see it in the contracts that we have. If you're a member of CreativeCashFlow.com, you do get subject to contracts. You'll see it in there. It is repeated several times. Now, I use the word violate in those contracts as an intentional scare tactic. Okay, now this is taken a page out of my mentor's book, Scott Horn, who I came up, partnered with, learned under. We did, I did my first probably 150 houses with him. And his contracts have the word violate in there. And I disagree with the word violate, frankly. We are not violating the due on sale clause. If you read the due on sale clause, now you could. I believe on FHA loan, there is the clause in there says if then. But if you read the due on sale clause of these loans that we are doing Sub2, actually read the deed of trust. That's where it's going to be. The deed of trust or the mortgage is where that due on sale clause is going to be. It doesn't say if you sell this property, then we will call the due on sale clause. What it says is if you transfer your ownership in this property or any interest thereof, the bank has the option to call the due on sale clause. I shouldn't say that. That's circular reasoning. What it says is the bank has the option to ask for the remainder of this loan to be paid off and due immediately. That phrasing is the due on sale clause. Okay, so it's not an if then. It's not if you sell this property, then we will do this. It is if you sell this property, then we have the option to do this. Okay, now there's a lot of logic that goes behind why we don't feel that they are calling or will call the due on sale clause. I've done several episodes on due on sale, so feel free to do a search on my channel here, CreativeCashFlow.com on YouTube. For due on sale clause, you'll get plenty of information about that. We talked about that one a lot. But I want to be very clear here that we are triggering that clause. It is not a violation. It's not saying don't do this. It is saying if you do this, then we can. So you've got to be super clear with your seller so that they understand the risk that they are getting into. Now, real world situation, we just don't see the due on sale clause getting called, okay? So personally, I am not a big proponent of being scared of the due on sale clause. Because in the real world, as long as the payments are being made and as long as the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, we just don't see the due on sale clause get called very often. I think if I call on the cumulative experience of all the people that I know that do Sub2 right, okay, I put very little weight in hearing somebody just random on the internet say, hey, I got the due on sale clause called, because you can absolutely force their hand and make them do that just by very simply saying the wrong stuff. Hey, that's what this episode's about, right? But out of the people that I know that do subject to correctly, we've seen 15, probably 20 or 25,000 Sub2 transactions spanning a 30-year period. And I know of about 10 due on sale clauses, fewer than 10 really, that have ever been called. Even the stories of, okay? I have one situation where I might have been getting due on sale clause called. I don't know if that's what it was or not. It's just very rare. So, not fearful of that. But there's a right way and a wrong way to handle things. There's a right time and a wrong time to say certain things. I think my partner Ronnie has a really funny scenario to kind of explain that situation of like, hey man, it's not wrong to go to your wife and be like, you know what, like we should start going to the gym. But it's absolutely wrong if you say that right as your wife is walking out of the shower, right? There's a right time and a wrong time to say the exact same thing. So how do you talk to the banks? Now, I know I'm setting the stage here, but I want to be very clear about due on sale because it is a somewhat obscure-ish thing. There's not a lot of data that most people have on that. I think I'm fortunate to be one of the most connected folks in this industry of Sub2 because I'm connected to other people that are the most connected folks that are in this industry to call from that information. Now, what I will say is I do have a little bit of very authoritative insider information, if you would call it as such. I've talked to some of the highest high-ups of, the banking industry in the nation and in the state. And, we always theorized for a very long time with due on sale clause, like, look, we can't go in and say, hey, we've bought this house subject to, will you approve that? Because the bank just straight up wouldn't be able to approve that. If they approved it for us, they would have to approve it for everybody, or else they're really risking a lawsuit situation. And it adds a whole new layer of underwriting and all that kind of stuff and processing that just frankly wouldn't make financial sense for them to go down that road. But, when we buy a house sub-2, more often than not, we're catching up payments. More often than not, we're helping a bank make the money on this collateral and loan that they originally set out to make, right? These banks aren't out to buy houses. These banks aren't out to foreclose on houses. If the bank wanted a house, they would be called Caldwell Banker. They wouldn't be called Bank of America. This bank wants to lend money and get a return on that money without having to think too hard about it and for it to sit inside of their situation. So let's do that. Let's help them make the money that they plan to make on this loan. Let's help our seller get rid of a house that they may not have otherwise been able to sell. And then we are providing a situation for another consumer to possibly have home ownership or a rental situation or whatever that is. But when we're talking to the bank, we're not going to say, hey, I just bought this house. Your person on the loan has sold the property. We're leaving the loan in place. It's called Sub2, and I'm going to continue making the payments on that. It's a little bit of a hand force. So how do you identify yourself while still being truthful, right? And only answering as much as is needed for this transaction to occur properly. So step number one of the most important things that you can possibly have in a subject-to situation is authority to talk to the bank on your seller's behalf. There's two different documents that you need in order to do that. Now, if you're a member at CreativeCashFlow.com, you have the contracts for download. They are if you hover over the Academy and there's a download section, it's the top thing in there. You've got the contracts. Now, in those contracts, there is an authorization to release information installed into those contracts. Now, we've got some tweaks into that due to our experience, right? One of the things that is fortunate that I'm able to bring to the table for our students there is just the length of time and the experience of folks that we run around with, that we've been able to tweak these contracts and do these things in such a way that, I see some of the Sub2 contracts that get floated out there and they're just awful, right? And they don't account for a lot of things. Our authorization to release information takes care of some things that pop up after 6, 7, 9 years worth of having a Sub2 that you wouldn't know if you've only been doing the business for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right? So use that. That is very important, using the authorization to release information so that the bank can talk to you about stuff that is on that loan. What's going to happen is your seller's going to sign the document that says, hey, so-and-so investor here, whatever your name is, has authorization to speak to you about my account. Now, here's the thing. The authorization to release information can be given to an entity. A power of attorney cannot be given to an entity. A power of attorney needs to be given to a person, a human, right? So when you have the authorization to release information, you can put your company name. Now, I discourage having a company name that says Jim buys houses subject2.com as the company name you're going to put on there, right? Again, it's not that we are necessarily, we just don't want to force their hand. So, naming your company name, something that it can leave somewhat of a question in mind, is one of the steps there. When we turn that in, you can, if you have employees, would be, by the way, the only reason I would go to an entity. Otherwise, do it to your personal name. I have it to a company, and it says, this authorization release information is made to Grant's company name and its employees, right? So when somebody calls in from my staff, they're able to speak to the bank as an employee of blank entity. That works for the authorization to release information. But the authorization to release information is a one-way road. It is an authorization for the bank to tell you stuff. It's not an authorization for you to do things on behalf of your seller, which you might need to do. You are absolutely going to run into situations where you need to change insurances, where you need to order an escrow analysis or something. Actually, I think they might do that off of the authorization. But there are reasons. There are times that you are absolutely going to need to have authorization to do things on behalf of your seller, and that is going to come from a power of attorney. Now, the power of attorney must be state promulgated. Maybe not promulgated. Maybe I should correct my phrasing on that. It must be state legal, I guess would be the better way of saying that. Your ability to do things with a power of attorney is entirely dependent on having a power of attorney signed with your seller and notarized that is legal for the state of the house that they are in. Okay? So, as a member at CreativeCashFlow.com, we don't provide the powers of attorney for each state. Those are typically pretty easy to find. You can just Google whatever state you're in and say, I need the power of attorney for this state. Those are typically pretty easy to get to. But you got to have that, and it's got to be notarized. And you send that, you fax it in, whatever that might be, to get to the bank. Now, here is a little bit of the process of what are the steps you need to take directly after buying this house subject to, so that you make sure that you're putting your I's and T's crossed and dotted, irrespectively. How do you say respectively when it's in the reverse? Well, as soon as you close on that property, you need to be filing that power of attorney / authorization to release information. In fact, I'm typically filing the authorization to release information upon contracting the property, because we are going to want to get information straight from the bank's mouth about this loan. It would be ill-advised for you to go into a subject to property where you're going to buy this thing and you've contracted it, and you look at it and the person's like, yeah, it's a $90,000 loan at 4.5%. And you write that down and you buy it, and you just go off of that word. You need to contract it. Part of your contract needs to be that authorization to release information. You file that authorization to release information with the bank, and then you need to get information from the bank on this loan, like getting the original note, or getting the current note, I should say, because sometimes there's been modifications, right? Getting that information straight from the bank is the most reliable way that you're going to know that you're not getting into an adjustable rate mortgage. You're not getting into something that has a balloon hitting in 2 months, right? Like, you need to know that from the bank. But the bank is going to ask you what your name is, and they're going to say what company you're with, and they're going to say what's your relationship with the seller, right? They don't really care. This person you're talking to on the phone doesn't really care what those answers are, but they are part of their script, and they've got to answer those questions. So here is one of the things that I think is the best way to handle in this conversation is you are managing this loan for Mr. or Mrs. seller name, right? Because that is effectively true. We are managing this loan for them. Now, they may say, okay, so you're a property manager, and it's a long conversation to go down that road. Sometimes they say you can either go down that road or not go down that road, but I prefer just to kind of repeat, well, I'm managing this loan for them, and then ask some questions, right? I'm managing the loan for Mr. Smith, who's a little bit confused on exactly what the terms of this loan are. So what I'm doing is I'm calling in to request the current note that he has, along with any escrow information that you guys may have. Right? And then it just kind of pops over into that conversation, and you go from there. Because we are managing this loan for them. We are making sure that this loan is taken care of, and we're doing it on their behalf. Now, that is how I like to address the situation. We don't have to tell them added information. It just creates more questions. And again, when I go back to, hey, I've talked to some pretty high up, I've had some really, really crazy big boy conversations with folks that are in control of these entire industries. And we had a moment here a couple of years ago where one of them was sitting in a board. We were inside of the Capitol, and they're like, look, I'm stumbling. I will prevent too much. Again, too much information isn't always a good thing. Basically, what it boils down to is, yes, we kind of got it right. The banks know this is going on. The banks know that Sub2 is going on, but they can't approve these because it would create so much more of a logistical issue, right? And so we just have to kind of play the game, and they know that they're playing the game, and that's what it is, right? It is what it is. But you got to do things the right way, and you do need to make sure that you're paying that loan, because we are helping this bank make the returns that they were looking to make. That is an explicit goal of what we are doing here, right? They lent to somebody hoping to get a return from it. We're helping this somebody. We're helping our ultimate end consumer. So again, that's how I identify. We're managing this loan on behalf of Mr. or Mrs. Smith, and we need to get some information on it because they're a bit confused on exactly what the terms are. So we need to request the current note, escrow analysis, whatever else might be out there. Then you run into a situation where you've got a new insurance, right? So we do that at the contracting stage so that we can get the information so that we can make sure that when we're closing on this subject to deal, we're closing on a Sub2 deal in the way that we want to close on it, right? That we understand the terms that we're getting and they are what we wanted from it. When you close on it is when you're going to be able, or be not necessarily able, but be in need of actually changing some stuff on that account. Right? You might actually need to make some changes under the authority of Mr. or Mrs. Smith, and that's where the power of attorney comes in. So you're going to call them, you're going to ask, where do you file powers of attorney? You're going to fax that in and make sure that that thing gets set. When that is set is when you're able to call back and start getting some things shifted out. Now, let's go back to the insurance thing, right? Because when you close on a property subject to, you're going to have to change out the insurance to make sure that the named insured is actually the person who owns that house. If you just leave the insurance in place, now you could leave the insurance in place and go get a separate policy, but now you're paying twice as much in insurance. It's just sucking out your cash flow when you don't have to do that. You can actually, put a good insurance policy in and be paying one and not have to really worry about that. Again, we've done separate episodes on insurance that I would encourage you to go watch, some of which with James Jenkins, who is a wonderful, brilliant nerd when it comes to seller financing, or when it comes to insurance and all that kind of stuff and navigating all of those waters. So you can watch exactly how to do those, or we talk about that a lot on the Monday night Q&As for Creative Cashflow. But when you're calling back in to get that stuff going, again, we are managing this loan on behalf of Mr. or Mrs. Smith. We need to get this insurance put forward, and then, just trying to answer only what needs to happen. Now, if you've got a situation where maybe the named parties are not in the right order, or they're not where they need to be, or whatever. We just ran into this situation here a couple of weeks ago where an insurance policy got filed in the same way that we always file our insurance policies, with the party names as we have always listed them, as I've talked about it previously, and the bank denied it. I can't remember which bank it was, but that doesn't really matter. They kicked back and they said, no, we need to see our seller's name, Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith, in the named insured line, whereas typically we put them in the also insured line. Now, the quick and easy answer to that is, finding an insurance policy underwriter that will underwrite as co-insured, right? So we can have the named, the seller's name in there, as well as your buyer's name in a wraparound. This is a wraparound situation as co-insured. And so that shows the bank has the borrower's name in that named insured line, just like they want to see. And the insurance company will pay out if there is a insurance issue that occurs because your buyer's name is listed in that. But trying to kind of, go through that situation, there's no benefit to explaining to the escrow department, hey, this is why these names are listed as such, like so-and-so sold it, then we bought it, then we sold it to this person, so this person's name is there and that person's name is there and blah, 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 blah. That's not going to be really of a benefit because the bank isn't going to change their policy for us, right? They're not going to change what they want to see because now they've been enlightened and they better understand what the situation is, right? So rather than being the answerer of questions, we want to be the asker of questions, right? We don't want to get down to a situation where we're just having to keep providing more and more information and possibly saying something stupid. Instead, we want to turn that around and just be like, hey, this got kicked back. We need to know why that got kicked back. And then they're going to say, well, we didn't see Mr. Smith's name in the named insured. And so then you're going to just reiterate that. Okay, so in order for this policy to be accepted, You have to see Mr. Smith in the named insured line. And here's a good phrasing that we learned from a mastermind that I was in one time from a tax expert that was there. A good question to ask your CPA about stuff is not, can we do this? But rather, has there ever been a time where this happened successfully, right? Not, can I write off this truck? Has there ever been a time where a truck has been written off? How did that happen, and can we do that, right? So making more of an open-ended question to work together on something. So you might use that same kind of phrasing with your bank. Hey, we need to see their name in the named insured line. Okay, that's typically not one of the ways that I've seen it. We've got the seller's name in here as the also insured, and Mr. Smith is that's how he's aware of the insurance policy and likes it that way. Is there ever a time where you guys accept their name being in that line? I can tell you the answer is no, but I'm just kind of giving you a tip for how to phrase some things and how to create that conversation. No, in this situation where they've already kicked it back. But then it's really about figuring out, what do they want to see? What will they be good with? And then working behind the scenes on our side to try and make our world match theirs. They are the ones that are in control. This is their loan. They are the ones that collateralized money on this. They are the ones that took the big risk on this. They are the ones that get to call the shots. So we need to know what shots they want called, and we need to work our situation within those boundaries of what they have. Okay. So again, that's really the big thing there, is just, we are managing this loan on the behalf of Mr. or Mrs. Smith, and we need to find out certain pieces of information because they are not fully aware of what blank might be and requesting that. Never had a problem with that. Now, let's say that you do run into a situation where the due on sale clause is being called. One of the things that I want to make very clear is that due on sale is a curative issue. It's called a curative issue, which means that it is an issue until it is cured. So due on sale clause is something where if you've got a subject to property and you run into a situation where the bank is actually calling that due on sale clause, the quickest way to prevent that from all going as south as humanly possible is to deed that property back into your seller's name. Now, this is going to take cooperation from your seller. If you have a buyer, it's going to take cooperation from your buyer, obviously. But that is going to be a quick, easy way to cure that issue, to remove that due on sale clause, and then you can, from being called, and then you can kind of strategize what you're going to do from there. Another way that you can do that, and the one time that I've had a due on sale clause that might have been called, again, it was a kind of a confusing situation. I really don't know if it was due on sale or not because the bank was not communicating with us. I just got private money and refinanced out of that loan. Basically, I just paid off the bank, said, they're not communicating with us. I don't know what's going on. I've got this note. And so I used a collateral assignment, hypothecation, whatever you want to call it. Got a private lender who wanted to get some private capital placed. If you're like many of the people that I work with, you've got an IRA, you've got a 401k, you're really good at doing whatever you're doing, and you want that money placed in real estate versus the stock market, those are the people I work with, right? I can put that into a house in much the same way I did with this one, right? I think it was like a $40,000 note to the bank, and I had $78,000 owed to me on the wrap. And so I went to one of my lenders and I said, hey, this bank is being weird. They're not talking to me. I think they might be calling due on sale clause. I've got $40,000, whatever it was, due to them, collateralized by a $70-something thousand note. How about we place your 40? I'll pay them off, and then I'll pay you instead of them. And your collateral will be, if I don't pay you, it'll be that you get this note for $70-something thousand, right? It's a great win-win. They are secured by a performing note. They're secured by us. And that's what I did to get that situation taken care of, right? So there's two quick and easy ways to do that. If you're in Texas and you run into a due on sale clause situation, I really advise that you call Scott Horn or reach out to him, Scott at Horn, Horne, realestatelaw.com. He's handled a lot of these things. He's one of the most experienced guys I know in seller financing, and he is an attorney who can help you through that situation. So he can help you, with whatever your options may be. But again, it is one of those things. If you hit due on sale clause, if that is happening, if you're getting the due on sale clause called on you, it's an all hands on deck situation. Y'all need to be on your feet, ready to go, talking to attorneys, making things kind of switch around, because the last thing you want to have happen is to have a good buyer lose their house because maybe you did something dumb on the bank, or maybe the bank just decided they wanted to call their due on sale clause, which they have the right to do, right? This is the reason why we so heavily disclose due on sale clause to our sellers and to our buyers, because they need to know, hey, part of my disclosure is if this does ever happen, which I don't think it's going to, if this ever happens, guys, y'all got to be Johnny on the spot. If I leave you a phone call or a text message that says, hey, due on sale clause is getting called, we need to get going on this, you need to call me back because we've got a timeline to make sure that you don't have a foreclosure show up on your record and that you get to stay in this house. So let's all work together and let's get this solved. And then you need to elevate to somebody with some knowledge to help you out on that, like a Scott Horn, like whoever your preeminent, is that the word I'm looking for, attorney for seller financing may be in your state, and then work to get that issue taken care of. Now, again, that's part of why I gave you the fact of it being a curative issue a little bit earlier, is because your simplest and quickest way is deeding that property back into your seller's name and providing that deed, showing it to your to the Sub2 bank, and they will have to stop that due on sale clause. But it is going to require some trust and some working with of your buyer who's about to be deeding out the property that they've been paying on for however long, right? And you need to take care of that, and you need to make sure that that you are doing right by them. It's very important that we make sure this is it's a complicated strategy. I think that educators that act like it's easy are really good at getting people to spend money on them. It is not easy. It is very complicated. There are a lot of ways that you can trip up on it. But there's also a lot of folks that are really experienced in this who can help you past those situations. And the risk to reward is so great that it's one of the reasons why I really have my eggs in the owner financing basket, right? I love owner financing. Now, I will tell you, I wholesale and flip and do all those other things too. I've got rentals, whatever that might be. Sub2 has been less popular for me over this last few years because everybody and their dog has a ton of equity and they're getting made huge offers and all that kind of stuff. Sub2 is going to be coming back more and more as the markets shift back down and there's more opportunities of helping folks out who may be behind on payments and don't have the equity that they once had. But it's something you need to have in your back pocket, and you need to be in a community of people who know what to do and can help you up and elevate into that next area. It's one of the reasons why we put Creative Cashflow's Mastermind together, which, by the way, shameless plug, we have our Mastermind coming up next month. Our members are voting on the dates right now. It looks like it's going to be April 22nd and 23rd, I think is what it is. It's Thursday and Friday. It's going to be phenomenal. We're going to talk about a lot of really high-end stuff and really helping people move forward. If you're interested in joining this so that you can get around a group of people who are doing owner financing at a high level. There's a lot of people who have, they're looking for their second or third deal, or some that are looking for their first. There's a lot of people in that group who are on their 20th and 50th and 100th deal, right? It kind of goes from one end of the spectrum of the other, and we really try to make sure that everybody is part of this group and being lifted up together so that everyone can hit that next step. This next mastermind is going to be really good for that as we talk about the different strategies and the different kind of formulas of how this business works. Not formulas in the way of like 70% minus repairs, but formulas in the way of like, hey, what are you leveraging? Time, money, and knowledge. Those are the three things it takes to get a deal done. So this is what you do if you got this, this, and this, right? Those types of things will be what we're talking about, but most importantly, it's being around people who know what you're going through. Being around people who may have experiences that can be shared and using that group think to do better and to have better results, because that's what we are all looking for, is how can we have better results that make us, a better living and help more people out in a less headache way. That's where we all want to end up anyway. So I hope that you guys got a lot out of this. If if something sticks out to you or you learn something, I always want you to comment, drop a comment in there and let me know something that's particularly stood out to you or something along those lines, because it helps me know as an educator what you're looking for and how I can better serve you to get to that area that you want to be to, whether that's retirement, whether that's a couple of houses a year, whether that's, a couple of houses a week, right? We want to help you get to that next level. So let me know how things are going on that. So again, due on sale clause is not the fearful thing that so many make it up to be. Of the people that I know that do Sub2 right, I just don't know if due on sale clause is being called. There are right and wrong ways to talk about these situations with the banks, and I hope and encourage you to read through this, to use the proper contracts, to go at this wisely, to help everybody out, crossing the right I's and dotting the right T's. That's wrong. But I hope you learned something from this. That's due on sale clause. Again, my name's Grant Kemp from CreativeCashFlow.com. I do hope to have you guys join us. We are taking applicants now. We've got 5 or 6 more seats that I can fill for this mastermind. So if you're interested, CreativeCashFlow.com/memberships, hit apply now. It'll be me that actually shows up to that interview, and we will talk about if it's a good fit. And if it is, we'll let you join in. If not, it's not, and I'm not going to take your money. So I look forward to talking to you guys. Hope you have a wonderful day.